Lindsey Graham's death came suddenly, shocking Washington and many around the world. On the evening of July 11, 2026, the longtime South Carolina senator died at the age of 71 following what his office initially described as a brief and sudden illness. Later, the District of Columbia medical examiner confirmed that he died from an aortic dissection caused by arteriosclerotic cardiovascular disease, a catastrophic cardiovascular emergency. He had recently returned from an overseas trip and was in Washington, D.C., when he passed away. For more than 3 decades, Lindsey Graham was one of the most recognizable and often controversial figures in American politics. To supporters, he was a loyal public servant who never stopped believing in America's role on the world stage. To critics, he was a politician whose changing alliances became part of his public identity. But beyond the debates, votes, and headlines was the story of a man shaped by hardship, military service, and an unwavering belief that his life should be spent in service to his country. We'll uncover the remarkable journey that carried him from a small South Carolina town to the United States Senate, examine the fortune and legacy he left behind, and explore why, after his passing, those who knew him best remembered something far more valuable than money. Stay with us until the end, because the final chapter reveals the part of Lindsey Graham's legacy that cannot be measured in dollars. Lindsey Olin Graham was born on July 9, 1955, in central South Carolina, a small mill town where life was simple but rarely easy. His parents, Florence and Millie Graham, owned a combination restaurant, bar, and pool hall. The family wasn't wealthy. They worked long hours, and from an early age Lindsey understood that everyone had responsibilities. As a boy, he stocked shelves, cleaned tables, and helped wherever he could. Customers came and went, but the work never seemed to stop. Those early years taught him discipline, but they also exposed him to ordinary people from every walk of life. Long before he entered politics, he learned to listen. His childhood changed forever while he was still a teenager. Within roughly 15 months, he lost both of his parents. His mother died after battling Hodgkin lymphoma. Not long afterward, his father also passed away from a heart attack. Suddenly, the teenager who had been worrying about homework and high school football found himself responsible for helping raise his younger sister. Friends have often said those losses matured him almost overnight. Instead of allowing grief to define him, Graham focused on moving forward. Family friends stepped in to help, but much of the responsibility rested on his shoulders. Years later, he would frequently point to that difficult period as the moment that taught him resilience and duty. Education became his path toward a different future. He attended the University of South Carolina, earning a bachelor's degree in psychology before continuing to the university's School of Law. While studying law, he developed a growing interest in constitutional issues and public service. He wasn't yet planning a career in national politics, but he had begun thinking seriously about serving his country in another way. After graduating from law school, Graham entered the United States Air Force through the Judge Advocate General's Corps. His military career would become one of the defining chapters of his life. As an Air Force lawyer, he handled legal matters involving military justice while developing a deep appreciation for the armed forces. Even after leaving active duty, he continued serving in the Air Force Reserve and later the Air National Guard, eventually retiring with the rank of colonel. Military service wasn't simply another line on his resume. It shaped the way he viewed nearly every issue that would later come before him in Congress. Whether discussing national defense, veterans, or foreign policy, Graham often spoke through the perspective of someone who had worn the uniform himself. After returning to civilian life, he opened a legal practice in South Carolina. His courtroom experience strengthened his understanding of the law, but it also introduced him to the everyday concerns of local residents. Before long, public service began pulling him toward elected office. His political career started modestly. In 1992, Graham won a seat in the South Carolina House of Representatives. The position offered little national attention, but it provided something more valuable: experience. He learned how legislation moved, how coalitions were built, and how compromise often determined whether ideas became law. Only 2 years later, another opportunity appeared. In 1994, he successfully ran for the U.S. House of Representatives during a Republican wave election. At just 39 years old, Graham arrived in Washington eager to establish himself. He served 4 terms in the House, gradually building a reputation as a conservative with a particular interest in military affairs and national security. The terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, profoundly affected his political priorities. As America entered wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, Graham became one of Congress's strongest advocates for an assertive foreign policy. His military background gave additional weight to his opinions, and he quickly became a familiar voice on defense issues. In 2002, South Carolina voters elected him to the United States Senate. It marked the beginning of a Senate career that would last more than 2 decades. Over the years, Graham served on several influential committees, including Judiciary, Armed Services, Budget, and Appropriations. His work placed him at the center of debates involving Supreme Court nominations, military funding, immigration, criminal justice, and international affairs. Few issues became more closely associated with Graham than national security. He consistently argued that America should maintain a strong military and remain actively engaged with allies overseas. He frequently traveled abroad, visiting troops stationed in conflict zones and meeting foreign leaders. Supporters viewed those trips as evidence of commitment. Critics sometimes argued they reflected an interventionist approach that kept the United States involved in overseas conflicts. His career also became closely linked with Senator John McCain. The two Republicans developed a friendship built on shared views regarding defense and foreign policy. They traveled together extensively, visiting Iraq, Afghanistan, and numerous other countries. Following McCain's death in 2018, Graham openly acknowledged losing one of his closest friends and political partners. Like nearly every major political figure, Graham's career included moments of intense controversy. Perhaps the most widely discussed involved his evolving relationship with Donald Trump. During the 2016 Republican presidential campaign, Graham sharply criticized Trump, questioning whether he was fit to become president. After Trump entered the White House, however, the relationship changed dramatically. The two men eventually became close political allies, working together on judicial appointments, foreign policy, and numerous legislative priorities. Supporters described the shift as practical leadership. Opponents called it political inconsistency. The debate followed Graham for years. Yet regardless of opinion, few questioned his influence. As chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee during key judicial confirmation battles, Graham helped oversee hearings that reshaped the federal judiciary for decades to come. Away from politics, his life remained unusually private. Unlike many national politicians, Graham never married and had no children. He often joked publicly about being one of Washington's most eligible bachelors, but he also spoke affectionately about the close relationship he shared with his younger sister Darlene, whom he had helped care for after their parents died. Friends frequently described him as loyal, humorous, and deeply devoted to the military community. He rarely separated his personal identity from his belief in public service. Again and again, Graham returned to the same themes: country before self, honoring those who serve, and protecting what he believed were America's interests. Whether admired or criticized, he built his career around those convictions. By 2026, after decades in Congress, Lindsey Graham remained one of the Senate's most recognizable voices. He was still traveling internationally, still speaking forcefully on national security, and still preparing for another election campaign. Few could have imagined that the final chapter of his life was only days away. For much of 2026, Lindsey Graham maintained the demanding schedule that had defined nearly his entire adult life. Even after more than 20 years in the United States Senate and decades before that in the House of Representatives, he showed little interest in slowing down. His calendar remained packed with committee meetings, television interviews, Senate votes, and overseas travel. At 71 years old, he was still one of Washington's most active voices on national security, foreign policy, and military affairs. Those who worked with him often remarked that he seemed most comfortable when there was work to be done. Whether speaking on the Senate floor or boarding another international flight, Graham continued approaching public service with the same intensity that had characterized his career. In the days leading up to his death, Graham had returned from an official overseas trip. Throughout his final public appearances, there was no public indication that he was facing a life-threatening medical emergency. He continued meeting with colleagues, discussing international security issues, and participating in the responsibilities expected of a sitting United States senator. To the public, everything appeared routine. Behind the scenes, however, an invisible medical crisis was beginning to unfold. On July 11, 2026, Graham was in Washington, D.C., when he suddenly became seriously ill. According to statements later released by his Senate office, the illness developed rapidly, leaving little opportunity for prolonged treatment. Emergency medical personnel responded quickly, and he received immediate medical attention. Despite those efforts, his condition deteriorated within a very short period. That evening, Lindsey Graham died at the age of 71. News of his passing spread across Washington with remarkable speed. Within hours, his Senate office confirmed his death in an official statement expressing gratitude for the prayers and support that had already begun pouring in from across the country. The statement remembered Graham as someone who had devoted the greater part of his life to serving South Carolina and the United States. Because of the sudden nature of his death, questions immediately arose about what had happened. In the days that followed, the District of Columbia Office of the Chief Medical Examiner completed its examination and officially determined the cause of death. The medical examiner concluded that Lindsey Graham died from an aortic dissection caused by arteriosclerotic cardiovascular disease. An aortic dissection occurs when a tear develops in the inner layer of the body's largest artery, allowing blood to separate the layers of the vessel wall. It is one of the most serious cardiovascular emergencies in medicine and can become fatal within minutes or hours, even when emergency care is provided. In Graham's case, officials confirmed that underlying hardening of the arteries contributed to the event. There were no verified reports that he had been battling a long-term terminal illness. Instead, the official findings described a sudden and catastrophic cardiovascular emergency. Once the cause of death became public, condolences arrived from every corner of American political life. President Donald Trump issued a statement remembering Graham as a longtime friend and steadfast ally. He praised Graham's years of military service, his dedication to South Carolina, and his unwavering commitment to the country. Former political rivals also paid tribute. Many senators who had spent years disagreeing with Graham on legislation nevertheless acknowledged his willingness to build personal friendships across party lines. Democrats and Republicans alike described him as someone who never hesitated to engage in difficult conversations and who remained deeply invested in the institution of the Senate. Several colleagues reflected on his unique ability to separate political disagreements from personal relationships. That quality had become increasingly rare in modern Washington. Tributes also came from military leaders and veterans organizations. Because Graham had served both on active duty and in the Air Force Reserve before retiring as a colonel, many within the military community viewed him as more than simply another elected official. Veterans praised his consistent advocacy for military funding, national defense, and support for service members and their families. South Carolina entered a period of mourning as residents reflected on the man who had represented the state in Washington for more than 2 decades. For many constituents, Lindsey Graham had become a familiar figure whose political career stretched across generations. Supporters remembered his accessibility, frequent visits home, and his willingness to speak directly with voters, even during periods of intense political disagreement. Flags were lowered in accordance with official protocols, while lawmakers from both parties observed moments of silence honoring his years of public service. Messages also arrived from international leaders who had worked with Graham during countless diplomatic trips overseas. Throughout his Senate career, he had visited conflict zones, NATO allies, and strategic partners across Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. Those relationships produced tributes recognizing his long-standing interest in international security and cooperation. Although reactions differed regarding his political positions, there was broad agreement that Graham had been an influential figure in American foreign policy for decades. Attention soon turned toward plans to honor his life. Public memorial arrangements were announced following consultations between his Senate office and those closest to him. Officials confirmed that opportunities would be provided for colleagues, constituents, members of the military, and longtime friends to pay their respects. Reports also indicated that ceremonies would recognize both his congressional career and his years of military service. Beyond those officially announced details, no credible public reports confirmed additional private funeral arrangements or family ceremonies, and responsible accounts avoided speculation regarding matters the family chose to keep private. As Washington paused to remember Lindsey Graham, many reflected on the extraordinary path his life had taken. He had entered politics as a young attorney from a small South Carolina town. He had become one of the Senate's most recognizable voices. He had advised presidents, debated Supreme Court nominees, traveled to war zones, and participated in some of the defining political moments of the 21st century. For supporters, he represented steadfast commitment. For critics, he remained one of the nation's most polarizing political figures. Yet in death, even many longtime opponents acknowledged the remarkable length and impact of his public service. With the funeral ceremonies underway and tributes continuing to arrive, another question quietly began emerging. After more than 30 years in national politics, decades of military service, countless awards, personal possessions collected over a lifetime, and years of careful financial planning, what exactly had Lindsey Graham left behind? The answer involved far more than bank accounts or property. It revealed the legacy of a man whose greatest investments were often measured not in dollars, but in service, relationships, and the causes he believed would outlive him. For someone who spent more than 3 decades in Congress and became one of the most recognizable figures in American politics, Lindsey Graham never lived the kind of lavish public lifestyle often associated with national power. He was known for his frequent travel, long hours at the Capitol, and his deep interest in military affairs, not for collecting luxury homes or displaying extravagant wealth. Still, after his death, many people naturally wondered what kind of financial legacy he had left behind. Public financial disclosures filed throughout his Senate career suggested that Graham's wealth was modest compared with many longtime members of Congress. Because federal disclosure forms report assets within broad ranges rather than exact figures, no precise total has ever been publicly confirmed. Various reputable financial estimates placed his net worth at roughly $2 million to $5 million during the final years of his life, although those figures remained estimates rather than official valuations. Much of his income came from the same sources that had supported him for years. His Senate salary formed the foundation of his earnings, supplemented by military retirement benefits earned through decades of service in the United States Air Force and Air Force Reserve. Like many longtime public officials, he also held retirement benefits associated with federal service. Unlike many wealthy politicians, Graham was never publicly known for building an extensive business empire or managing a large investment portfolio. No verified public records showed ownership of major private companies or large commercial real estate holdings. His finances reflected the life of a career public servant far more than that of a corporate executive. His real estate holdings were similarly modest. Public records indicated that Graham owned a home in Seneca, South Carolina, where he often returned between Senate sessions. The house became closely associated with his private life away from Washington, offering a quiet place where longtime friends and family members could visit outside the pressures of national politics. There were no verified reports that he owned luxury vacation estates, sprawling ranches, or multiple high-value residences across the country. For someone who spent much of his life traveling, home appeared to be less about luxury and more about familiarity. His personal belongings also reflected his lifelong priorities. Among the possessions most frequently associated with Lindsey Graham were military uniforms, service medals, challenge coins, photographs from overseas visits, plaques presented by military units, and awards recognizing his years of public service. Many of those items carried little commercial value, yet emotionally, they represented decades of experiences that had shaped his identity. Friends often noted that Graham spoke with particular pride about his military service. While his Senate career brought national recognition, wearing the Air Force uniform remained one of the accomplishments he referenced most often. Photographs collected over the years told much of that story. Images from Iraq, Afghanistan, Europe, and countless military bases documented not only official visits but also moments spent with service members far from home. Those photographs became part of a lifetime archive, preserving relationships built through shared commitment rather than political headlines. Books also filled an important place in his personal world. Known for his interest in history, constitutional law, and military strategy, Graham accumulated a substantial personal library over the years. While the exact contents have never been publicly cataloged, colleagues frequently mentioned his habit of studying historical conflicts and presidential leadership to better understand contemporary policy challenges. Letters and handwritten notes likely carried even greater emotional significance. Throughout his Senate career, Graham received correspondence from presidents, fellow lawmakers, military commanders, veterans, and ordinary citizens. Many thanked him for assistance with personal matters, while others expressed disagreement with his positions. Those letters represented something unique. They documented a lifetime of public engagement. Although there has been no verified public inventory of his estate identifying which documents were preserved or passed to heirs, historians often view such correspondence as an important record of public service. Questions also arose about charitable giving. Throughout his career, Graham supported numerous organizations benefiting veterans, military families, educational initiatives, and South Carolina communities. However, the full extent of his private charitable donations has never been publicly disclosed, and no verified reports have revealed detailed instructions regarding charitable gifts contained within his estate. Likewise, there has been no confirmed public release of Lindsey Graham's will or estate plan. No official probate documents have identified specific beneficiaries, distributions of property, or inheritance arrangements. Because Graham never married and had no children, public speculation naturally followed his death. But speculation is not evidence. Responsible reporting has consistently avoided claiming who inherited his assets because those details have not been publicly confirmed. Instead, attention increasingly shifted towards something that required no legal documents to understand: his legacy. Friends remembered the teenager who refused to give up after losing both parents. Military colleagues remembered the lawyer who continued wearing the uniform long after establishing a successful civilian career. Senators remembered a colleague who could fiercely debate legislation during the day and share dinner with political opponents that evening. Staff members remembered someone who demanded hard work but also remained deeply loyal to those who worked beside him. Whether people agreed with his politics or strongly opposed them, few questioned his willingness to devote nearly his entire adult life to public service. Former colleagues often recalled how Graham measured success differently than many people expected. He rarely spoke about accumulating wealth. Instead, he spoke about protecting alliances, supporting troops, defending constitutional institutions, and leaving the country stronger than he found it. Those priorities became the foundation of the reputation he left behind. His influence can still be seen in judicial appointments he helped oversee, national security debates he shaped, legislation he supported, and generations of younger lawmakers who worked alongside him. History will continue debating many of his political decisions. Some will praise them, others will criticize them. That debate is part of any long public career. But the facts remain clear. Lindsey Graham rose from extraordinary personal tragedy to become one of the longest-serving and most influential senators of his generation. He overcame devastating loss as a teenager, built a distinguished military career, earned the trust of South Carolina voters for decades, and remained engaged in public service until the final days of his life. His passing closed an important chapter in American political history. The fortune he left behind may one day be fully documented through public records. Yet even if every dollar were counted, every possession cataloged, and every investment valued, those numbers could never tell the complete story. The medals, photographs, handwritten notes, and memories accumulated over a lifetime carried a value no appraisal could calculate. For those who knew Lindsey Graham personally, those memories mattered far more than financial statements. In the end, wealth can be divided. Property can be sold. Investments can rise and fall. But a lifetime devoted to service, shaped by resilience, tested by controversy, and remembered through conviction leaves behind something that cannot be inherited. It must be earned. That may ultimately be Lindsey Graham's greatest legacy, not the size of his estate, but the example of a man who believed that the measure of a life was found not in what was accumulated, but in what was given in service to others.